Welcome to the next conversation in this series, Faithfulness as Resistance. A number of actions of the administration has caused concern because they affect the judicial branch of the United States. To help us explore some of those issues and those actions, I'm pleased to welcome today's guest. Judge Thomas B. Griffith, who has been described by the Washington Post as widely respected by people in both parties, and a sober lawyer with an open mind. Served on the U.S. States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia for 15 years before stepping down in 2020. A graduate of the University of Virginia Law School. Currently, he is a lecturer of law at Harvard University Law School, a fellow at the Wheatley Institute at Brigham Young University, and special counsel in the Washington, D.C. office of the law firm of Hunton, Andrews, and Cruth. He is also a member of the Federalist Society. With awards and honors too many to mention, I will simply note Judge Griffith was included on the New Republic's list of Washington's most powerful but least famous people. One of the many special projects he's engaged in since retirement is to help the reform of the justice system in the Ukraine. I got to know Tom Griffith for another reason. He calls himself a Christian who practices as a Latter-day Saint. Some of his friends call him an Anglican who believes in the Book of Mormon. Together with our mutual friend, Dr. Greg Prince, and Dean Randy Hollerith of the Washington National Cathedral, we worked together with the National Governors Association on a program held at the cathedral last February entitled Disagree Better. That work is continuing at various sacred spaces in a number of states. Thank you for your time and service to the country, Judge Griffith. Let me just jump right in.
Thank you for that very generous introduction. My mom would have loved it.
Well, it's too short. I'm just amazed at how your life has touched many people in many different ways. In your experience, will the federal judiciary be able to play its independent role, come what may?
I believe so. I think the federal judiciary is strong. It was the highest professional honor of my life to serve on the D.C. Circuit for 15 years. And the men and women I served with, and they were appointed by every president from Carter to Trump, were uniformly people I admire and respect a great deal. None of them was a partisan in robes. This is a real hard concept for most people to wrap their heads around because our society today is so polarized along partisan lines. It's hard for people to imagine that there are people in public life who have a higher duty than partisanship. But that's what judges are called to do. You take an oath to be impartial. And I served with these men and women, again, appointed by every president from Carter to Trump, who did that. I never once saw a vote cast that I thought that was in any way tainted by some partisan priors or a desire to help their team win. I just didn't see it. I just didn't see it. And so I have a lot of confidence that as the courts, as that court in particular, and other courts, I don't have any reason to think the other federal courts aren't run the same way, and the Supreme Court isn't. I know that. That as the courts face these novel issues in some ways, that they will wrestle with the law and they will do their best to apply the law, and they will not be thinking about partisan advantage. I'm confident of that. I'm confident of that.
It seems that the way that works is that the judiciary relies on respect and civility among the judges, particularly on the Supreme Court, but at other levels too. What is your experience of that? Maybe with some examples. Can that respect and comedy hold up in the present circumstances when it seems to have broken down in the other two branches?
I'm glad you mentioned it, because I think of all of the contributions the federal judiciary can make to the republic at this point in time, this may be the most important, because that is in fact how the courts work. They're collegial bodies. For an appeals court like I sat on, or for the Supreme Court, which is an appeals court, you have to get along with others. You're forced to. Decisions are not made by individuals. They're made by collectives. And I was fortunate to serve on a court where collegiality reigned. There was very little sniping or carping. That happens every once in a while. These are high stakes issues, and every once in a while someone would sort of throw a jab. But that was the rare exception. And the typical way the DC Circuit works is by consensus where possible. Dissents are rare. Everyone that I know on my court assumed that every other judge was acting in good faith. They may disagree deeply with their approach to the law. They may think they're misreading the Constitution on something fundamental. But I never heard anyone suggest that someone with whom they disagreed on the court was acting in bad faith. Mm-hmm. Now, one could say, well, that's just your experience on one court for one 15-year period. What I'm reporting about my experience on the DC Circuit is the same thing that Justice Stephen Breyer reports about his 28 years on the Supreme Court. And Justice Breyer wrote a lot of minority opinions when he was on the Supreme Court. There are a lot of cases which his view did not prevail, and yet he maintains that everyone is acting in good faith. He didn't think the people with whom he disagreed were seeking some partisan advantage. In fact, he uses the phrase time and again that the justices on the Supreme Court are not partisans in robes. And he says the same thing about the Supreme Court that I say about my time on the DC Circuit. He says that he never saw a colleague cast a vote that he thought that was in any way intended to advance some partisan political agenda. He said it just didn't happen. Lots of disagreements about lots of things, but he never thought that someone was, trying to win one for Clinton or win one for Trump. Judges just do their level best to not think that way. And so so that way of collaborative reasoning, of passionate argument, but made in good faith without ad hominem attacks, that is the staple of the life of a appeals court judge in our federal system. And I think it's a great role model for the rest of us, for the rest of our public life. If you bring reasoned arguments based on evidence, and it's devoid of contempt, devoid of accusing your opponent of acting in bad faith. Now, sometimes your opponent is acting in bad faith, right? So what do you do about that? Well, I think once again the example of the courts is a powerful one that can be applied throughout our public life, and that is no, you treat people, you give them the benefit of the doubt, and you treat them as if we're fellow citizens involved in a common enterprise. We have deep disagreements about the best way forward. But we make those arguments, we voice those disagreements with a real sense that we're dealing with people on the other side of the issue who deserve dignity and deserve respect, even when we disagree with their arguments. So that is what I saw in my 15 years on the DC Circuit, and I found that terribly inspiring. And that's how it works on the Supreme Court as well. So I think that is an example for the rest of the public life.
Now, in recent days, I'm speaking on May the 1st, in the recent weeks, there have been some reports of open disagreement among the Supreme Court justices, and there have also been reports of justices chastising lawyers arguing before the court.
Yeah, that's it.
It seems that this issue of civility is very much present there right now.
Yeah, that's an extraordinary story you're reporting on. If our listeners aren't aware of it, there was a very well-regarded Supreme Court advocate making a case last week in which she accused her opponents of lying,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and that was not well received by the justices. Uh,
yes,
so that's a good example of the need for decorum and civility surrounding our arguments. That we need to listen. The United States Constitution can withstand vigorous disagreement. It anticipates vigorous disagreement. It encourages vigorous disagreement. We must have vigorous disagreement, but it cannot withstand a citizenry that holds each other in contempt. And in my thinking, that too much of that has happened in our country. We've replaced argument with contempt, and all the social science research shows this. A supermajority of Republicans think that Democrats are immoral. Not just that they have bad tax policies, but that they're immoral, and vice versa. It goes the same way. It's a supermajority of Democrats feel the same about Republicans, that they're evil. Well, it's awfully hard to do what the Constitution calls upon us to do, which is to bargain, to negotiate, and to compromise with one another. It's awfully hard to do that when you have a sense that the person at the other side of the table is evil. We need to rid ourselves of those attitudes, and certainly of that language.
I want to switch to another level in this conversation. I want to pick up on a phrase you used, those who wear black robes. People in my profession also wear black robes. So we're both black robe people.
Yeah.
And I have come to know you. Fortunately, I've never been a defendant in a case before you yet. And so instead, I've come to know you not only as a man of deep faith, but also very well read in theology. How has that part of your life informed you as a lawyer and as a judge?
I've been very public and open about my faith commitments, so I get that question a lot, and I've thought about it a great deal. And at one level, when I'm doing my job as a judge with a case before me, interpreting a statute, interpreting a provision of the Constitution, trying to understand the facts of the case, at that point, I hope that my faith commitments have nothing to do with my work. It's at that point, it's Caesar all the way down. It's Caesar all the way down. So I do the best I can to avoid allowing my own particular worldview, which is shaped by my Christian faith, decide what the right result is in the case. Because the American people have decided the value by which I'm to adjudicate that case, and they put it in law. And that I may not like that law. I may think that law is highly offensive. I may think it contravenes my personal religious views. So what? When you take the oath to be impartial, when you put that particular robe on, it really is Caesar all the way down. So at one level, I hope that the values that my faith asks me to aspire to hold play no role in my job as a judge. But at another level, it plays a deeply profound role, and that is I want to do the best that I can, right? I recognize that I have a sense of vocation about this, right? And the vocation is that I want to do the best I can to abide by the oath that I've taken, to be impartial, to treat parties without respect of persons. I mean, that's a biblical phrase that's right there in the oath that Congress created that I need to abide. So in terms of my motivation to do the best job I can, I hope that that's driven mainly by my faith. But in terms of how I resolve a particular case, I try and do everything I can to avoid that. There's an anecdote that's widely told amongst judges that may be appropriate here. I heard it from a very well-respected judge. He said, Tom, he said, if you're on the bench and you feel the Holy Spirit moving you, take a recess. So, which I thought was a funny way of putting it in a funny way what I'm trying to explain by my suggestion that it's Caesar all the way down.
On the other hand, as you say, it affects in so many ways, and at some level, the desire to be civil and to trust one another and to respect one another is, if not a religious value, a moral one that transcends any rules of engagement. It's more existential, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. And now, so in the courtroom, there are rules about how you are to behave, how you are to speak. And so one can be a person devoid of any faith at all, and yet you're still expected to live by those rules. It just so happens that my Christian faith reinforces those rules because, to me, my favorite quote of all comes from C.S. Lewis in what I think, and many people think, was the greatest sermon that he gave, the Weight of Glory. He gave it St. Mary's Church, University Church in Oxford, where towards the end of the sermon, he says, next to the Blessed Sacrament itself, your neighbor is the holiest object presented to your senses. Now, if I aspire to live that way, but if you're aspiring to live that way, you are going to treat people with kindness and generosity and respect. You're going to listen and try and have empathy, understand their circumstance, understand their argument. You're going to give it the best shot that you can because they deserve that. When they come into court, everyone deserves to know that their story is going to be heard and that the judges are going to do their best possible job of understanding and empathizing. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to win, right? Because there's something called the law, and the facts of your case may be such that you lose under the law. So you obviously can't promise everyone who comes to court that they're going to win, but you can promise them that they're going to be heard and respected and treated with dignity. The rules require that. My faith requires that as well.
Maybe the other bridge to the world of faith is a common commitment to justice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we can disagree on what justice is, but justice is still the goal. And that it seems that this way of behaving to one another is a necessary predicate to justice, although you come from a profession that values adversary. I was talking with someone today who was a member of the debating society, and I don't remember the statistic, but a great number of lawyers started as debaters.
Right. Yeah.
And the desire to win the debate.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the work that brought us together around civil discourse at the National Cathedral, and now as that's continued, has valued civility and humility more than winning. What's your advice to those who are leading in, or to any Christian, or to those who are leading a Christian community? What can we learn from lawyers and judges about how to disagree better, and also how to advocate for justice?
Yeah, yeah. Big questions. Your reference to debating, if I can just a little aside here, I did not do debate in high school. I wish I had. But as I understand it, people who are well skilled in the art of debate, in most competitions, you have to take both sides of an argument, right? And the
Yes.
idea is you need to understand the other argument well enough that you can. Right? That's a pretty good check on all of us in any of these settings when we're dealing with someone else, is to seek to understand what their point of view before we launch into our own. I think that's true for all of us. It's certainly true for the best lawyers. The best lawyers understand the weakness of their case as much as the strength. Best lawyers understand the strength of their opponent's case as much as their weakness. And that's, I'll wax sort of theological here. I'm very much an amateur in this area, but our adversary system comes from a real sense of humility that maybe it isn't so easy to know God's will in any circumstance. The great rabbi scholar Jacob Neusner, who taught for many years at Brown and other places, had a big impact on me when I was an undergraduate. I heard him give a lecture when I was a student at Brigham Young University, and I'm going to have to be paraphrasing here, but he said that part of the human that's created in the image of God is our mind, is our brain, our reasoning capacity. And he said, we imitate the paramount form of worship of God in Judaism is the study of Torah. It's study, it's reasoning, it's thinking things through. That's how we can best serve God. And the adversary system is built on that notion that the best way for us to determine the right result, the just result, the equitable disposition in the case, is to have it argued passionately and well on either side, right? And our Jewish brothers and sisters teach us this so well, right? I mean, the heart and soul, in many ways, of Jewish intellectual life is the ability to reason and to argue and to argue. So I think that's a critical skill that's required in the judicial system and the adversary system, that we could all benefit from. But in the process, there's got to be a fair amount of humility, right? That I don't know everything, and I will benefit from hearing what someone else has to say about the argument. Even after hearing it and trying to understand it, I reject it. Even that process, I will be closer to getting to the truth, to getting what justice is, than I would be had I not engaged at all. In my tradition, in the Latter-day Saint tradition, we have a principle of governance in our ecclesiastical units that requires no one person can make the decision on his or her own. It has to always be in counsel with others. That's a great check on arbitrary decision making, but it's also a statement about you and I, or Tom Griffith alone, is highly unlikely to figure out the mind of God on any matter. But if I bring David McAllister-Wilson in, and Greg Prince in, and Ruth Okediji in, and others in, and we reason and discuss, you know what? We increase our chances of finding out truth, of finding out justice. But alone, that's really risky. In counsel, it always works better.
Well, this has been very enlightening. I appreciate very much your time, especially in your main retreat house. I wish I was there with you, and I look
I
forward
wish you
to
were
our time
too. It'd be
together.
great. We got a
Yeah.
fire going in the wood stove. It's 48 degrees outside.
No, I think it's
Beautiful.
80 here, so it wouldn't be
Yeah,
such a good
yeah.
idea.
No,
Yeah.
love to have you. And listen, I appreciate what you do, and your example and your friendship has been a profound source of inspiration for me, and
Oh my.
I trust it will continue to be. So thanks for all you're doing.
Well, let's get together soon. Thank you,
Okay,
Tom.
thanks, David. Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.